Hi guys, welcome to Rufio, it's Joe here. I just wanted to bring you another deck profile I've been working towards getting together for you. It's taken a little while, but before we get stuck in, apologies if I sound absolutely fucked. I've got a little bit of a cold going on, so my voice feels a little bit off, I'm a little bit sniffly, so hopefully I won't sniffle too much and piss you all off, but there you go. Anyway, without too much more messing around, I'll get stuck into the profile. It has taken me a little while to get together. I've been waiting to do this for absolutely ages. Gravekeepers. These cards are actually ridiculously difficult to pick up. Really awkward to get together. So I've been having to wheel and deal and get them from various places and all of that exciting stuff. And not all of it's in English, so we've got some exciting stuff, I guess. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the names, but we had to get them imported. But without much more messing around, let's get stuck in. So I started off with triple Gravekeeper's Heretic. So this card, whilst Necrovalley's on the field, it becomes unaffected by all of the card effects. So downside is that whilst Necrovalley's on the field, it doesn't gain the attack and defense that you would normally get from a Necrovalley boost. However, it is a bit more difficult for your opponent to out, and it has some kind of small amount of synergy with things like Torrential Tribute and that kind of thing, in that you can flip them up and your monster gets to stay alive, which is kind of cool. He's also just 1800, and he's kind of one of your go-to normal summons, I suppose. Again, I had to get this in cool Italian because it was like stupidly cheap compared to getting them from the UK. So that's pretty much that. And much the same with triple Gravekeeper's Commandant. So again, another stupidly expensive card for what it is, but we got there in the end. So this just searches your field spell. You want Necrovalley on the field at all times. You want to be able to get them in hand as quickly as possible. For some dumb reason, they decided to make this Earth instead of Dark, but what can you do? So yeah, triple of those, absolutely must run that. You need to see that Necrovalley as quickly as possible. Moving on, this is one of the most important cards in the deck. If this gets hit, you can be in some real trouble. It just sits there and does nothing. But whilst Necrovalley's on the field, this is basically a walking poly. And really the kind of objective of this deck is to set up Necrovalley, of course, and establish those kind of interrupts that make it a little bit more difficult for your opponent. But you want to see your fusion as quickly as possible. And this is what's going to get you there. You just summon this and then you can fusion with something in hand and just go from there. So yeah, you want to see those as quickly as possible. Any two Gravekeepers, as long as that's one of them, you've got your fusion and you're good. To keep the recursion up, we've got triple Recruiter. Again, this has just been reprinted in the Speed Duel pack, so it's actually a lot easier to get hold of now. But this was a little bit pricey before, actually, so I'm really happy that I managed to get it quite cheap in the end. But again, this is just going to keep your Gravekeeper numbers high. We don't run an awfully big monster count in here, so it's really important that you can keep recursion going and keep getting them into your hand as quickly as possible. Moving on, we've got two Headman. Two Headman's absolutely fine. This doesn't really come up an awful lot, mostly because you're going to need to try and normal summon it, and it's only got 500 attacks. It's not really ideal to just have it sat there. But it is good if you want to summon this and, say, get back your fusion monster, just to bring that, sorry, the one that goes into the fusion, I forget her name now, slipped my mind, Spiritualist, that's the one. So you get your Spiritualist back and then you can go off straight into fusion, so this is just going to help you get there. So it's good for that, but I think 2's absolutely fine. And just to round off our monster count, we've got triple Ash Blossom. This has now been reprinted, of course, as a common, and generally speaking, Gravekeepers are, I guess, intended to be a little bit of a budget deck, but they're actually quite pricey for what they are. They are a cool rogue build, though, and this is just going to help you keep alive for a little bit longer. The deck really relies on like normal summons and things like that, and your plays going through, and if they get interrupted, you can have some real problems. And Ash is just a good way to keep yourself going along. Moving on to our spell lineup. So, mixed rarities, sorry guys, again, difficult to get all of these things, you'll be surprised. We've got Necrovalley, triple of this, absolutely must run. This card is just nuts. It shuts down so many decks now. So many decks that you wouldn't expect to struggle with this deck really do now as a result of Necrovalley. It's really cool. Royal Tribute, it's at 1 for a reason. This card is absolutely nuts. If you open this, your opponent's in real trouble. You set up your board, you play this, and you empty all the monsters out of their hand. The only downside is that it's not really searchable. You know, it's Royal Tribute, it's not Gravekeeper's Tribute or anything like that. It's a bit of a shame. We've got triple Necrovalley Throne. Again, this is like Rota for the deck. It does have a second effect which allows you to do an additional normal summon, which is actually quite handy because normally you rely on it quite heavily. But more often than not, I'm using this just to get the extra card in hand. Otherwise, the deck can be a little bit slow, so you want to dig as quickly as possible. I'm running 1 Hidden Temples of Necrovalley. It's just, it comes up like kind of infrequently. It can become a bit of a brick at times if you're not careful. But if you do establish it and you've got quite a strong board otherwise, it's actually really good because it stops them, especially summoning anything other than Gravekeepers. So of course it can lock a lot of decks out. We've got 2 Gravekeeper Steely. I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. I tried to Google it so I didn't sound like an idiot. That's how it says it's pronounced, so we're going to go with that. You can add back any 2 Gravekeepers from your graveyard to your hand, and it's obviously unaffected by Necrovalley, so you can add back your Spiritualist and one other and just go straight back into your fusion. And of course you can put your fusion monsters back into the extra deck. Moving on, there's just cards just purely for the ability to just dig deeper. 1 card Destruction. Again, loading up your graveyard can be really, really problematic for some decks. Normally people have their graveyard as like an additional resource, so when you cut that off completely and you're dumping stuff in there, they can find themselves in a really, really not so good position. So card Destruction is kind of good. Again, it just digs you that little bit deeper, that little bit quicker. I've got triple Pot of Duality. Again, mixed rarity, sorry guys. Story of my life apparently. Triple Pot of Duality, again, you know, your special summon, once you've got your fusion on board, you're not going to be doing too much other special summoning until you need to make another one. So if you've already got one, this is a really good way to just keep digging and making sure you've got the cards ready so that you can play another turn if it continues to go on. And yeah, it's going to help you get there. And then just to round it off, I just have the 1 Pot of Extravagance. So I actually picked this up today, so that's the reason there's only 1 in there. I don't have the other 2 available. I would absolutely recommend running the others. I was running Allure of Darkness in here for a little while, but I found that banishing the monsters from your hand wasn't ideal. Stuff like Call by the Grave would be great in this, but the problem you've got is that Necrovalley conflicts with it too much, so you don't want to find yourself in a position where your opponent's activating hand traps and actually your Necrovalley hurts you more than helps you. So Call by the Grave, whilst it'd be good in some circumstances, just isn't strong enough to warrant getting in here, not with the conflict with Necrovalley. Moving on, so we go on to our trap lineup. This is still a little bit undecided. My ratios are not perfect here, but I am working on it. So this is certainly not gospel, this build, but I did think I should share it with you anyway. So we've got 2 Imperial Tombs of Necrovalley. I would like this to be at 3, but the problem is that this only works while you've got a Gravekeeper's monster, and Necrovalley has to be on the field as well. So again, a lot of people are smart, and if they're playing you, they're going to try and get rid of Necrovalley as much as possible, and you might find yourself in you know, a position where you can't really activate these and they become dead. But they are basically like a solemn. So monster effect, spell or trap, this just negates it and destroys it. Moving on, we've got triple Torrential Tribute. So stopping your opponent establishing cards that are going to lock you from being able to play out of the game. You want to be able to destroy those as much as possible. And again, it has that additional benefit of, if you open turn 1 and you can't really make any plays, but you can get into Heretic and just set one of these, then you're going to give yourself a turn to just keep playing and stopping them establishing a board. Again, potentially I would cut that down, but we'll see. It'll do for now. It certainly seems to work okay. Just 1 Necrovalley Temple. Again, it's one of those things where you have to have a specific setup, so you have to have the Gravekeeper and Necrovalley to get it on board. It is good that it cuts their attack, because you're not only that, you're getting the boost from your own Necrovalley. Again, it's just going to keep you getting Necrovalleys and stuff from your deck, that kind of thing. So if it's destroyed, you're going to get to set Necrovalley, which is kind of handy. But that's more or less it. It doesn't do a whole lot else for you. So I think 1 is just fine. And then I just finished it off with 2 Mind Crush. So this is something I added today. It's not something I've been running the builds before. But actually, the amount of decks that are adding cards to hand that are revealed, such as like Salamangrates and that kind of thing, because that is going to be your most common matchup now. Like, most people are playing it. So you have to keep that in mind. And this can struggle with a lot of meta decks. But a lot of them are adding stuff that they reveal to their hand. And this is just going to be another way to interrupt them. I mean, you're always going to try and go first with this anyway and set up your boards and hope that they can't break it. And then once you actually establish all the cards that you need, it can be really, really difficult to break down for them. And it can lock a lot of people out of the game. So, yeah, that's just going to help you keep in there. It's going to keep them from establishing the board that they want. I mean, if you get Royal Tribute and then you've got Mind Crush, you know exactly what they've got in hand anyway. And then you're going to give them some real problems. So, Moving on, I haven't done a side deck for this, but we go straight into the extra deck. Now, the extra deck is more or less unimportant, which is why Extravagance is absolutely fine to play. The only card that really matters is this one here. So, when this is summoned, it gets 100 times the level of the monsters used for it. It's just any 2 Gravekeeper monsters. So it gains 100 for each of those. Of course, it's going to gain 500 because you're obviously going to have Necrovalley on the field, because that's how you play this deck. It does also have the added benefit of a kind of weird effect. It's the timing of it's a little bit strange, in that you activate the effect, and then during the end phase, you can add a Necrovalley or Gravekeeper's card, not just monster card, from your deck to your hand. It also protects your Necrovalley, which is another really, really key part of it. A lot of decks actually struggle with this, like way, way more than you would think. It can be really difficult out. It's got a big body, it's got protection effects, it's going to keep searching. So it's really, really good. You want to establish that as quickly as possible. Normally, if you can get this turn 1 with a couple of other cards to back it up, you are absolutely golden. In terms of link monsters, I've tried to use ones that are handy that you can potentially summon, but honestly, you normally just lock yourself out with the fusion and really go from there. But the options are, you kind of want toolbox cards that you can just keep playing into. So you've done 2 Wee Witches because you've got loads of darks. Underclock, Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Cerberus, Nightmare Unicorn. Just a package to break up the field if you get really, really desperate. It's just going to give you the option to do so. Moving on, we've got 1 Decode Talker, and I've just chucked in the Borrow Sword because who doesn't want a win button? It's not really often that you're going to find yourself get into it, but I guess on the small circumstance that you do, and you can just attack for game, no reason not to. And then moving on, you do run a good amount of level 4s, so we've got Evil Sword Exciton Knight, Utopia and Utopia Lightning, again, just cards that can get you game or ones that can keep you in the game. And then we round it off if you find yourself stuck with an Ash Blossom in hand and you've just got one other monster. You can make Black Rose, blow up the field, put all the stuff in grave, and then play your Necrovalley again. And then they find themselves in some real trouble because they can't recur everything. And that is basically the deck, guys. Like I said, it's still not perfect. I've been playing with it loads. There's a few different variants out there, but I wanted to keep this as pure as possible. I am open to trying a few different builds, so I'll probably bring you those in the future now that I've got the deck together. It's certainly going to be an option. Again, apologies guys, I've been talking like a bit of a weirdo. My voice is failing me at the moment, so I'm doing absolutely the best I can to just keep bringing you this content. So thank you very much for checking in. If you have any suggestions on how you might run a build, or things that you find that work well for you, certainly drop those in the comments. If there are any decks that you would like to see covered, I'm certainly open to looking into picking up cores for you guys. So yeah, leave comments in the bottom. Check out links in the description. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for in this video. If by chance you haven't had enough of listening to me waffle at you through a video about a children's card game, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. The links are on the screen, or if you're feeling really lazy, you can click the links in the description. While you're at it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content too. It'll make me smile, I promise. And who can ask for more than that? Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.